leaders in epochal events and massive personalities. Before the law was known, there was a lawgiver. Before holy history was proclaimed, there were patriarchs and prophets. Before a unique ethical monotheism was taught, there was a people chosen to carry it. The epoch-making events recalled and reenacted by the people were considered unique and formative of their identity. The stories about the men who led the people cast them in large molds, but there was no process of apotheosis by which in many religions men of apparently superhuman gifts became gods. Neither were the events a replay of heavenly occurrences. The human measure was preserved. God remained alone divine, man remained human, and the historical arena of human responsibility and decision was neither confused nor aborted. Abraham, in Genesis chapter 11, 26 through 25, was turned from the gods to God, was then called to proceed to Canaan and invest it. He proved his faith by pilgrimage and by risking the sacrifice of Isaac. He was apparently a contemporary of Hammurabi. Isaac's son Jacob had 12 sons who were the ancestors of the 12 tribes. His calling was confirmed at Bethel in Genesis chapter 28, 10 through 22, and at Peniel, Genesis chapter 32, 24 to 30, where he received the divinely appointed name Israel. Some centuries later, when the people were slaves in Egypt, Moses was sent to lead them out to freedom. His calling at the burning bush on Mount Sinai, found in Exodus chapter 3, 1 through 4, the 10 plagues visited on the Egyptians, and the institution of the Passover in Exodus chapter 12, 1 through 30. The Exodus and deliverance at the Red Sea was in Exodus chapter 14, 21 through 31. The giving of the 10 commandments at Mount Sinai in Exodus chapter 20, 1 through 17. These are formative events in the faith of the Jewish people and later the Christians as well. Under the leadership of Joshua and his successors, Canaan was occupied. In the transition from nomadic life to agricultural location, intense struggle ensued between the God of history and the gods of place, each with a coterie of prophets. Elisha, by tradition, the first and greatest true prophet in the 9th century BCE, is remembered for upholding by fierce measures the worship of the true God, Yahweh, against the false prophets of the Canaanite and Phoenician gods. And this is in 1 Kings chapter 18, 17 through 40, and for his unyielding stand for social justice, again 1 Kings chapter 21, 1 through 24. These twin bases of ethical monotheism are the foundation of the faith of Israel as recorded in the scriptures. And I quote, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. During the monarchy, the struggle was evident also in the king's courts. David, king of Judea and then of the northern tribes, was a consistent defender of the true faith. But although the temple which he planned was built in the next reign, Solomon was not immune from dalliance with foreign gods. Upon Solomon's death, the north broke away and established a separate kingdom. The 8th century prophets Amos, historical self-understanding which had led to the building of the temple as part of a grandiose scheme to make Jerusalem a fit center of a world power, later known as Samaritans. They identified Mount Gerizim as the place of sacred sacrifice rather than Mount Moriah. When the people returned from exile under a tolerant Persian Empire, the temple was rebuilt, but their teachers, introducing and interpreting the Deuteronomic Code under the impress of the prophets, interpreted Israel's identity in terms of faithfulness to God's law. With the temple a very important but not indispensable factor at this time, clear precepts, at once religious and civil, were set before the people and a high priesthood. The Sanhedrin attained critical authority. A succession of conquerors, Alexander the Great, the Ptolemies of Egypt, and Seleucid dynasty of Antioch, ruled the Jews as a subject people. The hope of national freedom grew more intense, with generations of frustration, and different religious parties emerged with differing interpretations of holy history and the Jewish role in it. In 167 BCE, in reaction to the Hellenizing pressures of the Seleucids, came the revolt of the Maccabees, celebrated by faithful Jews for centuries to come, and indeed becoming a part of the Roman Catholic calendar. August 1st, Holy Maccabees, until the Roman conquest 63 BCE, a precarious national independence was maintained. Under John Hyrcanus, ruler from 135 BCE. However, the differing views of peoplehood and history were fixed in the pattern that obtained during the life and work of Jesus of Nazareth. The Sadducees were the high priestly party, strict constructionists, aristocratic and inclined to such accommodations with foreign powers as would protect their wealth and status. The Pharisees were the popular party, emphasizing the law both given and developed, opposing foreign influence where they noted it. The Zealots were a splinter of the Pharisees, ready to use violence to recover independence when it was again lost. The recent discoveries of records and writings of the Qumran community have brought home to students the great importance of another element among the Jews, the Essenes. The Essenes were so pessimistic about the world that they left the society and established self-contained communities in the desert. For the history of Christianity, the important point to mark is the splintering of national self-consciousness among the Jewish sects during the reads Lands of the Bible. Before Jesus. I see Arabia, Egypt, the Mediterranean Sea, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, Assyria. Wow, it's just so beautiful. I just love this map because it shows the fertile areas where the kingdom of Solomon was. It shows the major highways that they had, the camels, the horses, the ivory, which is elephant. It shows the cedars and copper. There's Arabia, land of the Cadmonites. There's Cyprus, Mesopotamia, Assyria, Mesopotamia, Greece, Italy, Egypt. It shows the Red Sea.